Hello and welcome back to another episode of Key Performance Indicators. We're all members of the Rigging Up Testing team, which is local to Reading with a few Swiss asterisks bolted onto it. Joining me today, I've got Jade, also known as Nephralite.
Hi, I'm Jade. I play Jinteki and Anarch and don't know what green cards are.
I've got Luke, also known as Lander.
I'm the madman that continues bringing Ampere to tournaments.
And I've got Vali, also known as Tomathor.
Hey, I don't play this game, but I already know enough to hate Jinteki, so I have some things to say about some cards in here.
With that, let's jump right into our first card. A card that was spoiled during the Eternal Super League tournament through playing two completely different cards back to back. The first card is Nanomanagement. I'm sure we will have lots of insightful things to say about this, but as is tradition, let's open it up with our non-netrunner player.
I can't believe they killed my 4-click ID dream like this. No. So yeah, it's the card we already had, right? It's gain 2 clicks for 4 credits.
It's literally identical to Biotic Labor.
Is this going to be playable alongside Biotic Labor in older formats? Or
Correct.
Yes, so that's why they demoed it in Eternal, by having someone do a turn where they played Biotic Labors and then played Nanomanagements.
Gotcha.
And say, actually, I have 6 of them.
I don't think there's decks that will go to 6, but I imagine there's Eternal decks that will be happy to go to like 4 or 5, just for consistency.
Yeah, that seems like the only real change here.
But previously, NSG had been on the record saying that there were going to be no reprints. Now, this isn't a reprint, it's an entirely new card for rules legal reasons. But this is the first time NSG has done a mechanic for mechanic reprint. There are other cards that are similar, like Leech and Data Sucker, that have very niche, very slight differences, notably the way they work against the card Archangel in that instance. But I believe this is the first rules mechanic for rules mechanic reprint, and so that opens a floodgate. And I would like all of you to call, will there be any more mechanic for mechanic reprints in the set? And if so, which cards do you think will get another mechanic for mechanic reprint? Or do you think Biotic Labor to Nanomanagement will be the only one? Let's start by kicking it over to Vali, who probably has the least to go on with this call.
I mean, I really want the Wayland agenda to come back. What's it called? You install it face up and you get credits when you advance it.
Oaktown.
Yeah, Oaktown Renovations, that's the one. I really want that one to come back. That seems unlikely to me because it's not nearly as clean and iconic of a design as Biotic Labor is. That is about the extent of my card knowledge on what's rotating. So I don't even know what exactly would be in the pool of things you could reprint 1-to-1 here.
In that case, let's pass it over to Luke.
If we're talking specifically like system update cards, then the thing is that Biotic Labor has so few numbers on it is part of the reason why I think it got a complete reprint. And if you were to try and add any or change any of those numbers, you end up kind of just with a different card, because Hasbiride has already explored a lot of other ways of gaining clicks, and the sort of idea of like an operation which is click positive, this is probably the best place for it to be. So like, I can see why Biotic specifically got reprinted. I don't think there's going to be any other exact reprints overall, because I don't think any other card is so concise in what it does.
I disagree. I think there's a few candidates of cards that are so fundamentally simple that I don't know how much you change them. The candidates I call from System Update are probably Inside Job, because like that card has so little text on it. Diesel just says draw free. I don't know what you change on Diesel to make it not just say draw free. I had previously guessed that Biotic would just be a full reprint, because how this card is so essentially Netrunner and so essentially Hasbiride, and there's just the only change I was maybe that they would even make is just like, you could put the influence up 1, I guess. It's already pretty expensive and no one would import it, but like you could. I guess the interesting discussion is like, I think you reasonably could just do Snare without any changes. I think it's very hard to balance Snare to be different, but the one I actually do want to call for this set specifically is Hostile Takeover, because we've seen an art that looks suspiciously like Hostile Takeover to me, and it has to be on a Wayland agenda. So I think you could probably just directly reprint that.
Yeah, I think like something like Diesel can very easily be filled by a different card draw spell, where gain an extra click is very, very limited in the amount of things you can staple onto it without it going bonkers, right?
Yeah. I do want to just preface with, I think this means that we might not have free ice in Hasbiride in the set, because they'd just be struggling for slots if that's the case, especially with an assets deck probably needing 1 or 2 assets.
I think that's more than I think any of us were expecting we would have to say about Nanomanagement. And so with that, let's move on to the card revealed with the ban list update. The card in question is called Gamedragon Pro. It costs 2, it's unique, and it's a hardware mod. It's 2 Shaper influence. When you install this hardware and when your turn begins, you may host this hardware on an installed non-AI icebreaker. Host icebreaker gets +1 strength. Abilities that increase its strength last for the remainder of the run.
So this is the thing that's meant to replace Turbine, if I'm up to speed with current events, because that card is getting banned. So first thing I will say, this is not necessarily worse than Turbine in certain situations, which is interesting if you're banning a card for power level reasons and then printing a card that has situations where it is just better. Those situations being if you have a very big server with a lot of the same ice on it, which I think is not that unexpected because I think a lot of good ice is barriers. So you slap this on your Fractor and you probably get pretty good value out of it. I think honestly the biggest change here is that it's unique. Where Turbine was kind of unique just by virtue of costing a lot of MU, and if you're not in Shaper, it was a lot of cost to import, but you could slap down multiple, and then you're breaking literally everything in the game.
Oh, trust me, people were slamming down multiple.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if this is unique, which means you only ever get 1 icebreaker with this on it, so that's, I think, maybe the biggest downgrade here, honestly. Because +1 strength gets you a lot there, and usually I think you can get another +1 strength worth of value out of it by getting the Gordian Blade ability. Seems like a good card.
So there are 2 cards I think it's worth talking about for context on this card. The first is a card called the Personal Touch, which was an old 2-cost mod that you installed on an icebreaker when you installed it, and it gave it +1 strength. But more notably is a card called Net Ready Eyes. Net Ready Eyes did meat damage to you when you installed it, so had a pretty hefty cost, but then it gave you a tool that you could move around to give things strength for any of your runs, which was obviously huge. So this has a level of flexibility somewhere between the Personal Touch and Net Ready Eyes, and it bolts on the Gordian effect to it as well. Both of these cards were good and saw historic play in a lower power format. Although, with rotation, we're likely heading into a lower power format.
I just really like this card because it does the job that Turbine was meant to do, which is as a tech tool against really big, overly glacier type strategies. Because if there's mostly those are normally local barriers, and there's other ways, there's some combos you can do with this to get more value out of the Gordian Blade ability, like painting ice, so you only need 1 breaker to get past an entire server. You can put this on LLBlumire, which is already quite strong. But the fact that it doesn't just invalidate all smaller ice as well, which is what was the crime that Turbine committed. More Turbine made Cleaver's crimes worse, but Turbine was just really strong. This is a lot lower immediate value. It takes a bit longer for it to pay out. It not being a program is actually a major detriment against it because you can't shoot it or recur it very well. You're paying that 2 credit cost most of the time. You're not recurring this from the bin later in the game with your last timer chip. You're not tutoring this out using SMC early. You're not discounting this with Dismas. It's significantly harder to get on the table when you need it because it's hardware. I do look forward to seeing a single propeller allow you to get through an entire server for only the subrogene costs one time.
Yeah, I think I'd identify a few breakers that really benefit from both the +1 strength and the sort of staying raised. And obviously one of them is the Buzzsaw and stuff will still have a great time. A +1 strength off it is a bit of a loss, but you pay 3 credits more in a run, but you're still saving a lot of credits compared to some other stuff. I did some numbers of quite how much this saves if you're running into 2 Pharoses back to back that are both, at 10 strength, and it saves 7 or 8 credits in a lot of situations for most breakers. So I think this is a good card. Whether it sees players much outside of Shaper, I think it's much better with Shaper breakers other than maybe Buzzsaw and stuff in Anar. I don't see any massive reason Crim needs it, but it's a neat card.
Crim breakers have some awkward breakpoints is the thing.
Yeah.
You slap this on a Carmen and they're no longer sad every time they have to hit a drafter.
Yeah, +1 strength is good. And the fact it can move between breakers, if they decide they're not Oopsal barriers and are actually Oopsal code gates, you can actually move it.
There is one thing which a mutual friend pointed out, which is that you can stick this on something like After Image, And you can have like a breaker suite of like Lobizame after image.
Yeah, the other real interesting use of this is stealth. It lets you spend less stealth money, which is good because you probably don't have that much stealth money for the stealth breakers. How much more viable that makes the stealth breakers without a full stealth ID is probably not that much more.
Well, the overall power level of the game is going down, so like I could see it.
Yeah, maybe.
But like it's a thing I'm definitely going to try out and experiment with.
Now, one thing that the Redding meta is known for is our love of the startup format. Around this time last episode, we entered into a lengthy discussion where you all correctly predicted the cleaver ban. Now, obviously, I've written the startup balance list alongside my collaborators at NSG, but I'm curious if either of you believe, for example, that Gamedragon might enable Pharos to come off the ban list, or any other potential thoughts on what may be changes going into the startup ban list that should be coming out in preview season at some point. It won't have a preview bolted onto it, but it will come out at some point during preview season.
I could see this. I could see between this and the fact that there's presumably something vaguely along the lines of pinhole threading in this set, is my assumption. I think between those, I would assume that it's probably okay to come and take Pharos off the list, but we'll see.
Pinhole threading in what mechanic?
They've said there's a card that lets you touch cards without accessing it.
Yeah, so it's been said that there's a card that lets you trash cards without accessing them.
Yeah, that might help. There's probably, I feel like there'll be a few things in the set that may be helpful. I'd hope.
My opinion is that Cleaver gets yeeted, and after that, it's like maybe let things settle for a bit. Because I think you just copy the standard ban list, but all the other ones are standard only, so you just ban Cleaver, so like Rising Tide gets to exist. Because starts up with Leech, Gamedragon, Cleaver would actually just be ridiculous, because Cleaver is cracked. But if you ban Cleaver, then like this
card also does fix the issue with my favourite breaker, Banner, because Banner is 5 strength and needed to be 6 strength. I might do that. Yeah, I think something along those lines will massively help with Pharos being a problem.
It makes it a little bit less obnoxious. We might still need stuff like this, plus Pressure Spike, I think just gives pretty good counter to Pharos. It's not like insurmountable 10 strength. It's still costly, it's still paying like 5 credits. It's not like, yes, I have to spend all of my life savings to get past it one time.
Yeah, this card massively punishes Glacier for existing, because the first of the Glacier is probably quite expensive to break, and everything from there on is probably just equal to the number of subroutines on it.
You still want Big Ice, because it only saves you credits if there's multiple Big Ice on a server. So
yeah, I think it encourages a lot of really healthy play patterns for the game, and I'm excited to see those.
I've seen some speculation that this makes Dow more powerful as a result of being able to subtype stack.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the same reason why I think I'm going to probably try and cook something using Palanquin. If there's 2 of the same type and then a third, you can paint that third to the same subtype, and then you just waltz in with a single icebreaker.
Yeah, this is definitely quite a useful card for if you're painting anyway. Lobby is the other example of it'll just be you've got 2 of 3 types on your breaker anyway, so that'll work well.
Yeah, you just have to manage power counters now. That kit isn't in the game, but like you can go resurrect Padma and all of her mechanics to charge Lobby.
I'm personally excited to put this on an umbrella, but I am the person that keeps trying to make Trojan breakers work. They are never going to work.
I'm excited to see more Shaper in this set, given I think it's one of the factions we've seen the least of other than NBN, I guess.
Speaking of factions we've seen a lot of, it's time to move on to the Zwicky group, Invisible Hands. This is a Wayland identity, unsubstantiated. It's 45 and 15 influence. The first time each turn you gain credits through an ability on an agenda or operation, you may draw 1 card. This came out in an incredible story article introducing the world to the cult-like machinations of the digital deity Plutus. And we'll delve more into that when we get to the card representing it. For now, what are people's thoughts on the Zwicky group?
I mean, first off, card number 69, nice. Very important. Beyond that, this seems unexciting, I will say. You get to draw an extra card each turn. We'll see an identity later that may let you draw a lot more than that per turn. So just comparing it to that, it seems a lot less exciting of a high end, but then you can gain credits very easily, so you can trigger it quite reliably. I still think this gives me hope that at least one of the agendas for Wayland will also like gain you credits in a way that is not just scoring it out, because it does specifically call out agendas, and I feel like if you score out an agenda to gain credits to trigger this, it's like fine, but like it's not very exciting, right? So for that text to justify itself, I feel like there should be an agenda that pays out when you just advance it.
There's a couple, but also if you're like last click scoring, that means you're last click drawing a card, which is a bit of a rough sell.
Yep, exactly.
Last click drawing a card isn't great, but it's also like draw you would have gotten anyway.
Oh, it's not terrible. It's just there's a caveat to it. Personally, I really love the flavor and stylings of this, like the W in the negative space, the new subtype unsubstantiated for an identity. And then I get a huge amount of dissonance seeing building a better world below that. Like, it's not that I can't make that flavor work, it's that I don't know if just the phrase action at a distance convinced me that those two are the same thing. It's interesting because I don't know if mechanically there's any dissonance there. It's more that, like, just like on a meta level of everyone knows that card is building a better world, and I assume was called that in playtesting. It's really, like, the flavor's really interesting, but it's, like, I don't know how much that flavor feels like it was what the card was always designed to be. But I like it a lot. It's a much better take than building a better world ever was.
I really like this. The fact that it's capped at once per turn means that you don't need or have to just cram your entire deck full of transaction operations to try and get maximum value out of your identity. You realistically only need enough so that you're likely to play at least one every turn. And the fact that it draws you into more transaction a lot of the time, because they're all in your deck, you want to draw them. Drawing into them cards that trigger the identity, so you're pretty likely to be able to trigger this every turn, is very nice. And just card draw is, like, a consistent card draw is just nice. It means that you don't have to put quite as much other card draw in your deck. This drawing like 5, 6, 7 cards over the course of the game is still a major impact on how the game turned out. I'm curious to see if they'd use any sort of weird deck building to do with it, because drawing cards is normally for the faster types of game plan. The most extreme end is asset spam and more faster tempo things. Most decks like card draw, but this isn't building a glacier or anything.
Rush Wayland is very much a thing.
This is Rush Wayland if I've ever seen it, you know.
Well, we spoke briefly in there about the potential pitfalls of drawing last click. There is a card that I think we should sequence break to go ahead to talk about. The mad god from the deep net himself, the evolved trading algorithm that is Plutus. This is a zero-cost, unique Wayland asset, Deep Net. It's 3 to trash, and it has 3 influence. As an additional cost to res this asset, forfeit 1 agenda or reveal and trash 3 cards from HQ. When your turn begins, you may play 1 transaction operation from archives. After it resolves, remove it from the game.
Gorgeous artwork, first off. Really love this artwork. I need a playmat of this. Beyond that, I think this card is really good. This card cooks, I think. It's just essentially just free money every turn is what it boils down to, right? Because I assume most transactions are the kind of cards that net you some money.
Yes, they all do. That's the one consistent characteristic of a transaction.
The only ones which don't have it are the modal ones, red level clearance and KPI, as it's an option to gain money, but you don't have to pick it.
And I think the cost of this is it might as well not exist. I think you're almost never going to forfeit an agenda for this. I think you're almost always going to trash 3 cards, because either you can trash transactions with it, in which case it's, yes, you would rather also play it and get value on the way down, but it's still fine, right? You still get the value on the way out. And discarding cards is not necessarily a downside. You can just discard your agendas and spin doctor them away. So I think this will almost always be activated for the cost of discarding 3 cards. And I think it's a very good card if you do that. And 3 to trash is not the most fragile thing in the world. This is, if you have to get through a bunch of servers to get to this, and then through a bunch of ice to get to this, and then it just sits there generating value every time. This seems very good.
Yeah, I think this is a very solid card. The obvious sort of flashback to other cards printed before be Brian Stinson, who got banned for not making you pay the cost of that transaction operation. But you could do some pretty fun bits with this too, especially because the red level clearance says gain a click on it, right? So you can just clicklessly gain a click, which is pretty nice.
4-click turn. Hey, look, Vali, your deck prediction exists. It's in
Yeah, it's in here. See, you found it. It's just actually Wayland. I'm sure you like it. It's green.
Oh yeah, I love this card. Something else when your turn begins, I assume that is already the corpse turn. That is not still the runner's turn.
So in Netrunner, your turn begins and then your turn begins.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was looking at the Zwicky group, because as a commander player, I spotted the first time each turn, and it was how do I trigger this on my opponent's turn?
Yeah, so you can trigger the res on your opponent's turn, but there's no way for you to fire the turn begins on your opponent's turn.
Which is a shame because using a terminal to skip their turn sounds like really funny gameplay.
Oh dear.
No, I mean more like the because they're drawing a card on Zwicky Group is limited to once each turn, not once each corp turn. So I'm like, is there a way we can activate an operation during a runner turn?
You can trigger Divested Trust on the runner's turn to gain credits from an agenda to trigger it that way. But that's such a niche thing, I don't think it's going to be realistically a thing that you do with it.
Yeah, I feel like this card generally just makes Zwicky Group make a lot more sense as a thing. I think when your Plutus gets trashed, it's going to feel a bit rough. I don't know how much ice you put in front of it. You probably need a bit.
Yeah, like it is a little bit pricey to get rid of, and the fact that it costs resources other than credits to get going is nice because it means that you actually have those credits to play the transaction operations. Because like the cheapest, like there's a couple of really cheap ones, but the more valuable things you do out of this card cost more. Like you can kind of think of it as like put a card from archives into your hand, play the card at no click cost, or one less click cost. It's a ton of value every time. You just need to have enough transaction operations in the bin so that you can fire this every turn.
It'll be interesting to see if Plutus gets played in any non-Zwicky IDs, because like it's good, but transactions are a little niche. I guess Ob can do extract more, which I don't know how much they even use extract nowadays anyway. It'd be interesting to see if either the Jinteki IDs use this, because one of them needs few cards in hand and the other gets a bonus from trashing cards from hand. You know, neither of those feel like a cost to it, but I don't know if there's any good Jinteki transactions really past Hansei, you know?
In terms of low influence, Planogram is noteworthy. I mean, if the runner is tagged, then this is just repeating Rashida Yahim for as many planograms as you have. That's a high price to being tagged.
I could see some Hasbyron use of this as well, because they have so many of the cards that pop off really well with this, right? They have Greasing, Corporate, Red Level.
I think that's Plutus litigated enough, so let's double back to the release schedule and move on to talking about Rio Pheonix Ono, Out of the Ashes. Their pronouns are any/all. She has 4 MU, 0 link, identity Gmod, 45 and 17 influence. Anarch, the first time each turn a run becomes successful after a subroutine resolved during that run, gain 1 credit, and the corp trashes 1 card from HQ. Before we pass over, I'm going to explain the janky wording because I've seen so many people questioning it. The reason it's worded like that is so that a successful run doesn't eat your trigger. If it followed the more typical templating of the first time each turn you make a successful run if a subroutine resolved, then if you made a successful run without a subroutine resolving and then made another one in which a subroutine did resolve, that second one wouldn't get the trigger. So the reason the wording is awkward as hell is to make sure that your trigger never gets eaten. With that, we'll pass it over to Tomathor.
This seems good. That's about all I can say to it, really. It generates value when you slam your face into subroutines, which Anarch already wants to do anyway. It's a Gmod, in case we get a reprint of our favorite DJ. I don't really have much to say about this card, I don't think.
Banker go brr. This code Banker just turns any and all like one-iced server into a little bit of econ and hand disruption. Obviously doing that will eat through your deck quite quick, so Pheonix will want a ton of draw. Banker just makes any and all ice such a liability against this, losing a card from HQ most turns, maybe every other turn, but it makes like really smaller, cheap gear checky taxing ice way more of a liability than just hard ETRs. It's good, consistent disruption, which the Corp does get control over, so it's a little bit mitigated.
I mean, the control is don't res ice, which isn't much of a game plan.
Yeah, no, that doesn't win you the game. Like, if you don't res ice, then they just get in for free. Like that's the problem.
And there's a reason Sabotage has historically said that the Corp chooses, because have you considered how insane this mechanic could be if the Corp didn't choose which card they're trashing?
Yeah, and then you put that on a hardware and you force everyone to bring dice to tournaments.
Like, you're still removing cards from the Corp's hand because it's a success trigger when you run HQ. They have to trash a card and then you access. Like, it's really a question of how much can you let this ability, how often can you get this ability to fire, and I think on most board states you probably can.
Yeah, I think a lot of people Like, I've seen a lot of people really down on this ability, like, you're never going to get a fire this. I think you're going to get a fire this a fair bit. I've always really enjoyed Mercury. This is the Mercury and Anarch I've always kind of wanted. It's, you know, reminiscent of Alice. It's forcing the Corp to trash some stuff, which means it goes well with all the sabotage stuff. And it's got 17 influence, which is the second 17 influence runner. I think the other one's Ken, who is rotating, so it'll be the only one in standard. So overall, I think there's really a lot to love here. If, you know, ultimately, if your ability convinces a Corp not to res a piece of ice, you're winning, I think. Obviously, Banner is the ideal card for this. Like, they've said it themselves, Banner Girl. I think I'm going to really enjoy playing this in Startup. It'll be interesting to see how it goes in Standard, but I don't want to just have to Bankar for everything. I feel like Bankar to solve all your problems here is boring. But I also think you don't need it that much, because, like, just have breakers. This ability's great if you have breakers. You're allowed to break subroutines. You're not Mercury, you know?
So are we calling Gamedragon, Banner, Rio as the new terror of the startup format?
It's what I'm going to be doing in the startup format.
My view on this is that I'm dreading going into it. This in startup maybe less so, but like this ability is actually like pretty reliable to trigger if you really wanted to. Like, you're gonna have to suffer to do it, but like this is Anarch, that's what you're doing.
Corps want ice. Corps are gonna put at least one ice on every central. And if you have a banner, then I fail to see how they're not triggering at least one subroutine, because the end of the run still counts as triggering this.
Oh no, yeah, no. I'm fearful as the Corp player. Like, I'm dreading playing into this and having to like lose a card basically every time.
I think it's great. There's one other idea we'll get to later, which I'm also pretty up on. Maybe I'll run this, but I'm very excited to play with this. I think every tool it gets will also be quite fun. It just feels like it's going to be fun to play, you know? I don't know if it's good.
Well, why don't we jump ahead a bit and talk about one of those tools, and also a card filling a somewhat important slot that's been talked about a bit in the Neon Static interviews, for example, as a tool to help startup players contest Skunk Void, and that is Shred. It is an Anarch run event for 1 influence. It costs 1 credit. Run any server. The first time the Corp would end that run, prevent the run from ending unless the Corp reveals and trashes X cards from HQ at random. X is equal to the number of cards in the root of the attacked server.
This feels very narrow. Like, against Skunk Void, yes, this is great. You get through the ice, you pay for Skunkworks, and now they need to discard 5 cards if they want to keep you out of the big pile of things you're trying to access here. But outside of that, not convinced about this card. If you're trying to target like a server that has like a end the run subroutine somewhere, that feels very narrow, and even then it's like not guaranteed that there's going to be more than a thing in that server. Discarding a card to keep the runner out is almost always going to be worth it. Although it does say at random, so you might get screwed over for that, but you know, it never hits the important card. I'm not convinced. If Skunk Void is big and like you're expecting to run into a lot, this is a good tech card against it. But outside of that, I feel it's very limited.
I just see this as pay a credit, the Corpse losing a card from their hand guaranteed, no matter what. When you combine this with Pheonix, like on turn 1, the Corp has slowed down an ice. They have put something behind the ice. You shred into it. You're either getting in and triggering your idea ability, or they're kicking them out, they lose a card from hand, and now that you know what the face check is.
Well, no, not if they don't res the ice.
But then you played a 1-cost run event, which said the Corp didn't res their ice. That's a pretty good 1-cost run event. Is
it? Is Tread Lightly a good card?
Inside Job is a good card.
I think the difference is that Tread Lightly no longer has text at the late game. This still has text.
I think this also has significantly less text come late game, because late game you're much more likely to like be, assuming you're playing against a deck that doesn't put like 3 things into its root servers, right? It's going to be like trashing a random card come late game matters a lot less, I feel like.
It depends on the matchup. If you're in a matchup where you're able to assert a form of remote lock, then very often agendas start piling up in HQ. And Anarch has not had good, consistent ways to exploit that. The closest they got recently was Eye for an Eye. But when you compare that with cards like Cupulation, which is pretty reliably seen out of both Shaper and Criminal, it doesn't really stack up in terms of a late game HQ finisher. This enabling them to ship cards out of hand in the way that more used to, I think possibly does have utility.
I think this has utility. I think late game, or most factions tend towards having some form of a clown car with at least 1 upgrade on it. I don't think I've seen that many decks that just say no upgrades exist in the game. So I think the idea that you're probably hitting, I guess NBN is probably the worst matchup because they probably don't have it in the run anyway, and they probably are just cutting some stuff. Like, if they have an upgrade, it's Hollow Man, and their Hollow Man doesn't have anything on it because they've scored it already. But everyone else, like, you know, Wayland love Clown Car, HB love Clown Car, Jinteki love their Clown Car of Adrian in it. So I think that's pretty good. I'd play it.
Well, speaking of corpse trashing cards from their hand, our next card is a Jinteki Identity Division. AU Co, the gold standard in clones. It's 45 and 15 influence. Whenever you do damage or trash one or more cards from HQ, place 1 power counter on this identity. When your turn begins, you may remove 2 hosted power counters to look at the top 3 cards of R&D. Trash one of those cards and add the rest to HQ.
Alright, well, first time I read this, I thought maybe we finally have a Jinteki identity that plays a fair game, because, you know, drawing cards, pretty good. We like drawing cards. And then I realized that we're drawing Jinteki cards, so it's still going to be pain, misery, and suffering all around. This seems good. This seems very good, I think. Drawing 2 with selection every single turn, potentially. We'll see how reliably you can get that to actually be every single turn, but at least in the early game, it won't immediately be live. But I think come like turn 3 or 4, I think you can keep this going for like the rest of the game, which honestly might be too fast. You're losing 3 cards off the top of R&D every turn, and
then mandatory drawing.
Yeah, this puts you on a timer. This wants you to win fast. So, but I think it's got legs. I think if there is a shell around this that can support this, I think it's going to be very good.
Obviously a lot of people are comparing this to Personal Evolution, and whilst I do think the changing the net damage from a payoff whenever a gender is scored or stolen to the setup of you want to have other cards which do damage, and also the trash from HQ clause. Turning the damage from the payoff to the setup means that you want more damage cards, and you have to actually have those damage cards resolve, rather than it just being like a free thing that happens at like an awkward time for the runner, like stacking with stuff like Sting and Fuji. Like this doesn't end up with the whole, oh, you accidentally touched 2 Fujis in archives, you now die. You no longer get that, but you still get give them 2 cards. Again, as people have been saying, use this with cohort, but in my opinion, that's way too many cards. Once this is online and whenever you trigger it, you're removing 4 cards from your deck. Your agendas are going to enter the game very quickly.
You're aware that it has a second mode, right, where you don't trash cards and you instead reveal some of those huge amount of cards you've been trashing, because I think that's where the cohort usage is. I don't think it's on the first part. You're going too fast. You've jammed a couple cohorts on table. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a card that you've not advanced yet gets scored as a 5/3. Seems pretty good to me, I don't know. I really want to love this card, but I feel like it's too easy, which sounds ridiculous, but I feel like there's very few Jinteki cards that don't trigger this. I like my Jinteki as its weird little jank, and this feels not jank. This feels too coherent.
The strongest one I've seen anyone talk about is Rezzing Anemone.
Yeah.
Rezzing Anemone forces you to discard a card giving you a counter and then deals damage giving you a counter, meaning a Res of Anemone immediately primes the egg.
And you spend Anemone a card to draw 2 more cards.
I've got to say, this art looks much better now. I can see it with some amount of pixels as well. I hadn't noticed the clones in the egg before, mainly because they were about 2 pixels big.
On the back of the ID art, you can see one of those clones in one of those chambers.
Oh, it's really fun. I hadn't noticed that.
I thought those were eyes for a second. I thought those were
yeah, they do look like
Pluto's
eyes
staring
on the
into my soul.
Low DPI version. But yeah, no, I think it's a very good ID, and I think it will see plenty of play, and it's why it's not the ID I'm that interested in playing.
I know, we're interested in exclusively the jank.
It's not, it's going to be good, but it's not going to be jank, it's just kind of going to work. You play Hansei Review, you get a counter. You play, basically any card you play is either going to give this a counter or have net damage on it to give this a counter later. The whole Jinteki card pool just kind of works flawlessly with this, and that's not a bad thing, but it's, I think this will see play and it's quite good.
This ID will finally answer the question, how much card draw is too much card draw?
I think if there's a coherent straight up combo you can assemble towards in Jinteki that just wins you the game outright. It can be like a 5-card combo. It doesn't matter because you're going to see your entire deck anyway.
Triple Reaper function on the table.
Well, yeah, but I mean like straight up a combo without that doesn't give your opponent like room to properly interact with it.
I think this just tempos, and it just tempos hard. You could you can use the trash to put an agenda in the bin to then grab to put a Regenesis and put a Regenesis in your hand to put on the table to score that later. Like, it does some kind of like, I'm unconcerned about this thing's potential to score out and do things, you know?
Yeah, but I think this might be like an idea that like imports a measured response or two, because like you're gonna find them.
I really like, in general, this feels like they've always been sort of trying to do somewhat archives matters a little more for Jinteki, and I really like how this does that. Like it's subtle, but this does make archives kind of important as a zone because you're trashing probably quite a few cards into it.
And sometimes you'll just see like 2 or 3 agendas, and then you're like, well.
It's interesting because the obvious thing to do is to try and Regenesis out some of those agendas you're seeing, but the identity does non-bow with Regenesis.
It's a May, you know, you just choose not to use it. The turn you're about to score Regenesis, just say no to this ability and then it Regenesis is fine.
Or you use like Moonpool or something as a expensive seamless launch.
I think the other one is where we're going to see some more advancement counter support.
With that, let's jump ahead and talk about P2 Untaian. This is P2 Untaian, Life's Building Blocks. It's a Jinteki identity, 45 and 15 influence, and it's a division. When your discard phase ends, if there are 3 or fewer cards in HQ, you may pay 1 credit to place 1 advancement counter on an unresed card you can advance. Tomathor, any thoughts beyond its Jinteki and evil?
It's Jinteki and evil. What can I say? I'm like, I was looking at the card. I'm like, oh, this is kind of neat. It cooks your Charlotte. It lets you like it pre-cooks your 4/2 agendas so you can score them out. That's not what this card is going to do. It's going to cook clearinghouses, right? Like that's what this card is going to do. Or you're just going to be shell gaming it to hell.
I think Shell Game is a place that a lot of people will go with this, but I'd be really excited to see if we can convince it to do anything that's not Shell Game.
Saving a click every turn is like...
Because, like, saving a click every turn feels pretty good, but the problem I've been having with it is every time I've been trying to brew, like, okay, so how do you turn 1 set up your fight, like, set up to score? And it's rough, you know? Like, if you're rezzing Tattoo and you're paying the 1 for the advancement counter, you can't afford to res out your, like, 4/2 agenda on turn 2.
The answer is probably that you play Hansei / hedge fund, play a cheap gear check, put something behind it.
Hansei install is a line, but it feels like this idea just feels a bit delicate in the sense that, like, as a rush idea, I think setting up the, like, you're going to have to spend a turn or so setting up the rush in a way that's a bit annoying to actually get much done. But I think this is truly the one I look at and see the most potential for things to happen in the future that's not there.
I think missing out the trigger on turn 1 is probably fine. You just get set up, and then turn 2 is when you start throwing things in the remote and saying, here we go.
The problem I have is that a lot of the things you would want to set up then also break your chain. Because if you prepare a 4/2, your next turn you're just going to be advancing, which means either you're going to miss out on the trigger, or you need something else on the table and be under 3 cards still after you draw your mandatory card for the turn. Similar for Charlotte, if you use this to cook a Charlotte, you're drawing 2 cards per turn. You now need to empty those 2 cards out of your hand just so you can cook the Charlotte again.
And it can only cook Charlotte the first turn because it's an unresed
card. Wow, okay, I just only
there's some jank that's here in terms of, like, there's ways to unres the Charlotte, but it's jank, you know? And, like, that's not really my problem with this as a, like, ID. I think my problem is that, like, if you're actually looking at the Jinteki card pool at the moment, there are, you know, Ronin's rotating, so there are, Charlotte, Urtica are the only advanceable assets you're going to have that aren't agendas. So
Clearinghouse is essentially a Jinteki
sure
card.
They might hit Urtica Cypher, but if you've only got 1 counter on it, it's only 3 net damage. I think most people are just going to run whatever you advance. I really do think this is the one where we're going to see a lot of cards that support it because it really needs it. Whereas, like, I don't think Alco. I think Alco will have cards, but I don't think it massively needs those cards.
It has Sting already. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
This does as Vali's been mentioning, let you turbo out a clearinghouse, though. Like, you could potentially full cook a clearinghouse in a turn and a half, basically.
Yeah, it is a very fun clearinghouse card. Especially if you had a Lacoste on it as well. Like, if you can get the time to put Lacoste on it, you can probably 2-turn out clearinghouse pretty consistently, which is good. I don't know if that's what I feel like this is the idea I'm gonna be trying to build in startup, and I don't know how it's gonna go. But I'm excited for it.
I think the big thing is like losing a credit every turn, basically, because of the playing advancement counters. Is like trying to keep up. Like, I think economically it's probably fine later in the game. But like early in the game, you're gonna want to like balancing your economy between protecting the thing that you're advancing and actually advancing the thing.
I think this is also my favorite NSG art for Jinteki so far. Like, it's just lovely.
It's very pretty.
I do love how it's done by the same artist that did Personal Evolution for NSG, and it uses the exact same like color profile. It makes its intents and inspirations very clear.
Yeah, I really like the art and everything of this.
I'm just dredging the turn 1 mitosis into 2-3 triple advanced cards, with one of which.
Oh, that's a great point. I hadn't considered Cerebral Overwriter. Okay, this is a great card.
No, I don't. Absolutely, like as long as Cerebral Overwriter is legal, like this is like, it's due depression.
Turn 3, you take 3 core damage. You steal an agenda, but you take 3 core damage.
Seems fair. Yeah, did I already mention that Jinteki is War Crimes?
That's not even a Jinteki card. That's why I missed it.
It's doing the thing where it's actually a Jinteki card, but you need to so it costs you influence to import.
Yeah, I think this is the interesting thing for this idea is I really wish it had 17 influence, because I think it's going to have a lot it needs to import. You know,
I feel like I should have 10 actually.
You used to hate Jinteki. I think like Master Chasfo is interesting with this because you can get like a free counter on it. Like you can have
yeah, but only while it's unrest.
But like a 6-cost Master Chasfo that eats their money guaranteed the first time. That's still like a credit save. Like if you don't have
it can cook your Pharos though. Hate to be a bad human, but
I actually hate the fact that it says unrest on this card, because that just like I feel like that cuts off a lot of the like less just all in this kills you kind of avenues. This just as pigeonhole this into just absolute pain.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not Charlotte Cooking Simulator, but you know.
I also think if I run into this on JNet Casual as a shell game deck, I hate playing against this way less than I hate playing against Personal Evolution, because at least this doesn't punch me in the face for winning the game.
Yeah, oh no, it's no contest compared to P, but there's a lot of space for crimes still.
This worsens the punishment, but it isn't a constant punishment.
Our next card is an Anarch Identity Natural. Topan, Ormas leader, pronouns are they, them, and they have 4 memory units and 0 link, 45 and 15 influence. Once per turn, spend a click. Action. Install 1 card from your grip, paying 2 credits less. When you install that card, suffer 1 meat damage.
This makes me sad, because it makes me think we're giving up on Seb as the install Anarch, and I like Seb. So I hope we still get some things for him. But this seems solid. Paying 2 less a turn is pretty nice. Also getting your discard synergies going, strike funds and what have you. Yeah, this just seems very, very solid. Putting cards on the table for less cost is good. More news at 11.
The Shaper player in me is almost tempted to play Anarch.
See, because I also don't play Anarch, and like this is like, because the thing is, it's like you're basically turning a random card in your hand into 2 credits. Is a way of looking at this, which is like that's pretty good. Like clicklessly turning a card in hand into 2 credits, as long as you haven't, as long as Anarch has the card draw to maintain that every turn, that's like pretty solid. Obviously, there's also synergies with stuff like Steel's Good Strike Fund. Buffer Drive is quite nice with this, because it means that if you go like complete turbo draw, you could probably make a moderately aggressive Topan list with just an absolute pile of draw cards. Put a Buffer Drive on the table, and you're like not going to run out of cards. You just continually put things on the table for 2 less. Just go brr.
It'll be interesting to see if anything gives like the meat damage's upside, because historically there's been some amount of meat damage prevention that has long since rotated. There are a lot of cards that synergize with having trashed your own cards, so I'm sure it'll work out all right. It feels very boring and value pilled in the way that Hosh is, but I think it's at least more interesting than Hosh. So
we've somehow managed to not mention the fact that it's basically had patchwork on an ID yet. This is noticeably, most people are like heavily comparing this to Patchwork, which makes sense. It's very similar effect. It's less rule crimesy though, much to the delight of Lucy.
Tomathor, do you know the actual rules text of Patchwork?
Vibes?
It's interrupt. Whenever you would install this hardware, call a judge. That's what the card says.
Classic.
This card not seeing the future makes me extremely happy.
But what, your cards don't see the future? That seems cringe.
It's interesting that this lost the event clause of Patchwork. Like, I think it's probably healthy to force there to be install runner, but like...
Yeah, it being an identity and therefore available from turn 1 could potentially just be like a short gamble for net 6.
Net 8 if you hit a strike fund.
But like, it installs all types of cards for 2 less. Like, assuming you have only one breaker in hand, your breaker costs 2 less. Like, this is a good card.
So as long as you have enough card draw to maintain cards in hand.
Given this set kind of... It'll be interesting. This set kind of needs to be the card draw set to maintain the pace of Netrunner, and it'll be interesting what card draw Anarch get, given that neither of the IDs have any card draw built into them.
Yes, and they both want card draw for their abilities.
What if we see an Anarch draw console? Hear me out.
Excuse me, there's 3 copies in my deck right now that I'm shuffling. I'll have you know.
I respect you playing it, but I have only barely played Amanuensis, and I also play Seb.
It might see marginally more play now that floating a tag isn't instant death. Mildly less. It'll probably still not.
The fiction story that revealed Alco did mention new flavors of Diesel.
Yeah, Redshift Diesel! Make it happen!
Kiwi Diesel for Shaper.
I think we're gonna see card draw. It's just that, like, it'll be interesting on what it is, and I think what card draw we have changes my opinion of these, like, no card draw built-in runners quite a bit.
Goji Berry Diesel would be Red Diesel. Yeah, so the article mentioned Goji Berry Diesel, Kiwi Diesel, and Blueberry Diesel to give you your full color spread.
If we get one Diesel in each color, that's hilarious.
There is already a blue Diesel, right? It's like...
Yeah, Blueberry Diesel already exists, it just sees no play because it's slightly too weak effects stapled onto each other, which don't quite make it worth.
I personally am really excited. For the first time I get to watch Alco racing against Topan with Lago to see who can run out of cards fastest.
I do find it a little interesting that I was sort of expecting some, like, I guess this can install viruses, but there's not really a virus runner who's going to be in standard after rotation.
Seeing as in standard, the virus support is, you've got in Anarch, the main 2 are Fermenter and Audrey.
Is Botulus leaving? Is that update?
No, Botulus, I know.
Botulus is Gateway. So you'll have Botulus, Fermenter, Leech, Audrey, Helium-4, Chisel. Like, that's not a bad selection, but this set did have Imp and stuff in, so I think we lose Imp, but you probably get,
Imp, which is the big
hopefully thing. Want to get at least one more virus out of it.
Like, there's still a bunch of other virus, but like the big thing with virus Anarch is that freedom is rotated, which means that you no longer have unconditional trash every turn, which was miserable. I think
Imp is naturally somewhat unhealthy for the game, so
your broad concern is that there might not be enough installer Anarch support, given that tends to be in viruses, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of good viruses right now.
Yeah, it's not that there's no installer Anarch support, and you can steal some of Seb stuff. It's just that my concern, like, this is one of those cards where I'm excited to see what tools it's given in this set, as opposed to looking at, like, Rio, where I look at it and go, she's excellent, I want Zim to just run with all of the cards that already exist, I don't need anything, you know?
I personally am just really, really glad that Startup is going to have a generic value Anarch. We might be able to live in a world where Anarch sees more than a 10% play rate in Startup, with Topan coming into existence.
Yeah, having a generic value Anarch and, like, a bit more full speed ahead, we're gonna fuck up the corpse shit Anarch in the course.
They're both a huge improvement in playability over Quetzal and Raynor, because as much as I love Quetzal and Raynor, they're both pretty niche.
They're bad. Raynor is so bad compared to Modern Netrunner, and Quetzal is only ever put on DJ sometimes.
Quetzal has play in a world where Poison Vial exists. Unfortunately, that's not startup.
Yes, true. That requires specific synergy, whereas Topan and Pheonix are both more...
I think in a core set, this idea makes a lot of sense for sure.
I am curious to see if Topan ever sees play at top-level competitive while Hashiko exists, but I'll continue rallying for ban Hashiko, unban DreamNet until they ban Hashiko and unban DreamNet.
Like, thing is, comparing this to Hashiko specifically is, like, Hashiko, most Hashiko decks basically spend a credit to draw a card every turn, whereas this is turning a card into 2 credits. So the way how the decks build themselves are very different. It's really a question of how much card draw does Anarch have.
Yeah. I mean, Hashiko is a generic value run Anarch, and this is a generic value install Anarch. But it's nice to just have a generic value Anarch. With that, I think it's time to talk about the final spoiler we have. Coming out just earlier today, Barry Baz Wong, the Tri-Maf veteran. He is a criminal ID, 45 cards and 15 influence, 4 MU, 0 link, identity cyborg. Whenever the corp reses a piece of ice, you may install 1 resource or piece of hardware from your grip.
Yeah, the first reaction I've seen to this card is people thirsting over him. So there is that. If you want to play Hot Crim, there you go. Beyond that, I'm not sure where I land on this guy. It gives you a good tempo when the corp reses ice. Notably, it doesn't allow you to install programs, which are usually the thing that would interact with ice. So you can't react to the ice being res generally. It is only hardware, which I feel like is... Alright, well, yeah, Boomerang is a card. That seems good to install with this guy. Beyond that, I don't know if you're looking just for the tempo, I think it's like fine early game, and it falls off very much later game. But yeah, being able to cheat in Boomerang, that makes it pretty much always useful during whatever state of the game is in. So yeah, I think this guy is pretty solid then, yeah.
Yeah, I said it in Store Crim as a joke when you asked me for predictions of what the Crim IDs would be, but like, this is great. I love this. This is like truly just hyper aggressive. I am running. What are you going to do about it? What's that? You're about to... They res something that's a nasty face check. Just put flip switch on the board and jack out. You can use Lucky Charm if they just put a simple end the run out, ice out. Like, it's just such a flexible card in terms of what you can do, in the same way that, like, Matif the Corp just could respond to anything the runner was doing. This just lets you respond to whatever the Corp has done before you encounter the ice, which is just really good. Also, you could just, grab Simul Chip and grab the break you need if you're trying to be, like, disgusting and actually correct. It can also fetch both Devil Charm and Crew. You just need to have one of those on the board already as a warning that you're about to do this to them. Like, it does so much. It's just... The flexibility is just really good, and I think this is the most excited I've been for a Crim in quite a long time.
He does a really interesting... because you get a free... You get a click of value, you get a free install at, like, possibly the most valuable time, which means that you can either install something to help you deal with the ice immediately, or you install, like, a value card, and then you just bounce off the ice, and in which case you didn't quote-unquote, waste a click by forcing the corp to res ice to keep you out.
I'm looking forward to using it to install Q-Loop, and then using Q-Loop to grab the exact right breaker I need off the top of the deck, and then going good at Netrunner.
Yeah. This card, just like generic value resources later in the game. And we're ignoring all of the potential ways to extend the longevity of this ability using stuff like Window of Opportunity to, like, get another trigger off the ability on whatever ice. Anything that dereses helps this identity a lot, but it isn't really critical, because just getting an extra, like, 3-4 clicks of tempo within the first few turns whenever the corp resed something is just really powerful.
I guess my interesting question to ask, this is more probably to Luke than Vali, because I don't know if Vali necessarily knows all of them, but, like, what console are you thinking of for this? Because you could obviously have Hermes, but you could also just be running Masterwork and shove down 2 things instead.
Masterwork helps with the whole hardware situation and the timing window. You can just not use the install ability on Masterwork and instead have Masterwork be a draw a card every turn. Like, that's still a thing that
it feels pretty good.
Like, you might even go even more tempo heavy and put Penny Shaver and just run multiple times every turn, stack run events and use your runs, like, just go extreme hyper aggro, and just, like, getting Veg Team on the table clicklessly may finally make the card just about good enough.
Yeah, I feel like this is the encouraging Crim aggro that we've deserved. Obviously, there should be run events Crim as the other ID, because, like, there's 6 run events in this set. Are you telling me there's not a run events Crim?
I think another thing which is consideration is that it's how this compares to something like Sable. When you compare this to Sable, like, how much extra clicks are you getting off your ID ability? With Sable, the first couple turns, you're fine. You get free runs. The core price is up, but you haven't set up yet, so you can't get in, so you might miss some marks. And then later in the game, once you're full setup, you just get 5 click turns. Whereas Baz is just all of the clicks in the early game, and then slowly taper off as the corp is rezzing less and less.
To me, I think it almost feels more like Trojan's Arasana than it does Sable.
Yeah, this is a very I am playing counter magic in Magic kind of ID, in the same way that Ari always was pretty good at.
Yeah, like, it's very much like I will put down exactly the correct answer to this solution. The lack of Shaper tutoring makes it probably a little bit less, but, like, you have, like, boomerangs, you have flip switches. At the very least, you can always just leave.
I am curious to see how well Crew Charm Baz works.
I think that's a lot of influence is the thing. Because Devil Charm is 2 influence, and Crew is 3. So you can only import, if you're doing triple Crew, triple Charm, that's all of your influence.
It'd be fun though. The other thing is you could always just, like, gachapon for stuff. You know, like, it feels like it has a lot of things. Like, worst case, gachapon feels pretty fun. There's just so much this does. I love it a lot. Also, Try Me is an excellent piece of flavor text.
With that, it seems that we've come to the end of all of the previewed cards over the past however long it's been since our last episode. We're almost certainly going to be doing another few of these as we continue going on, but I'll thank everyone that's watched or listened so far for doing so. If you could and you enjoyed, please subscribe, like, leave a comment for the algorithm, all of those wonderful things that you can do to help support us. And we'll hopefully see you all in a week or so's time with some more previews.